Hi, everybody. We are so excited to be here today to talk about post-MBA career opportunities. My name is Catherine Tuttle, and I am with Fortuna Admissions. Let me get this to go. So Fortuna Admissions is an admissions consulting firm. We have over 35 former gatekeepers at the world's top business schools. I personally was at Duke University's Buchla School of Business. My colleague Malvina, who is here, had spent some time at Harvard, and we also have people from around the world, including INSEAD, LBS, Stanford, Wharton, and so on. We have a lot of great content on YouTube with some great tips. Some are specific to certain schools, and some are about the MBA admissions process in general. And if you like what you hear either today or online and you'd like a free consultation, you can just go to our website, fortunaadmissions.com, and we can set something up. And we also, just this summer, launched Fortuna Careers. There are a number of our coaches, including myself and Malvina, who have experience within the career centers at these top schools. And so we are leveraging that experience to continue to help our clients post-MBA. And so we offer a mix of online tools and personal coaching to help you navigate that journey. So as I said, my name is Catherine Tuttle. I spent 5 years at Duke University's Buchla School of Business. I was an associate director in their career center and also served as the liaison to the admissions team. And I'm going to let Malvina introduce herself, and we will get into the presentation.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Malvina Complainville, and I have a background in career development and talent development. I worked at L'Oreal USA for a number of years in that capacity, and I worked at Harvard Business School in their careers team doing a lot of coaching on post-MBA goals and how to implement those goals. And I've been with Fortuna for a certain number of years.
Perfect. Well, I'm so glad you can join me today. I'm looking forward to the discussion. We will take questions throughout, so feel free to type them in, and we'll stop every so often and check in. So to get to the topic today, we often get this question: what are the most common career paths post-MBA? And what I love about the MBA degree is that it is incredibly versatile and prepares students for careers in basically every industry and every function. So I'm hesitant to say there are common paths, but there are certainly areas that schools send more students into than others. GMAC, which is the Graduate Management Admission Council, put out a survey in 2019 to MBA employers. And what they found was that they were most eager to place students into these 5 areas: so strategy and innovation, finance, marketing, consulting, and business intelligence and analytics. But outside of that, there are so many other opportunities ranging from, e-commerce to energy, entrepreneurship, healthcare, a ton of options. And what we're going to talk to you about is how to identify, what's the right option for you and how do you tell that story throughout your application. when you're thinking about that and how to position, your experience and how it translates to your post-MBA goals, it is good to look at the employment reports for the schools you are interested in. These are readily available online. Malvina and I have detailed memories, some good, some bad, of trying to track all this data down while we were at the schools. But you want to think about how to align your goals with where the schools are sending their graduates. So I looked at Fuqua and Harvard simply because that is where Malvina and I were, and then I looked at Berkeley to get a West Coast input. So if you look at this, the major functions and industries may not be all that surprising, right? So finance, general management, consulting, these are the things that we typically think about. Although if you look at technology, which is 10 years ago was not on the landscape as much. So as the market evolves, so does MBA employment. And so we want to look at not just the big areas that students are going into, but also some of the more niche areas where still a good number of students are going. So at Fuqua, you have private equity, corporate strategy, leadership development. Harvard, you've got business development, strategic planning, and then, based on the market and the location of the school, at Berkeley, there's a good subset going to media and entertainment and energy. And so we bring these slides out just to show you the breadth of opportunity that exists, which is incredibly exciting, but also many times quite overwhelming for our applicants who are trying to figure out where they fit and how to tell that compelling story through their application. So I'm going to pass that off to Malvina, although it looks like we do have some questions popping up already.
So we have some questions, and a number of these questions actually have to do with how do you approach a career switch or a change in function or change in industry. And I do feel like we're going to cover that in the next slides. I'm
thinking, Malvina, I'll keep an eye on it and let you know if there's anything that we need to address specifically, but I would agree we can kind of get into this. And if you still feel like you have more questions, please feel free to continue to chat them in.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so what is a career vision, and why develop a career vision, and why is a career vision important to your application? And why would this be relevant to the admissions committee of a business school? So let's look at these questions. A career vision essentially are your post-MBA goals. It's what you want to do in the next 3 to 4 years, what you want to do long-term in the next 8 to 10 years. It helps define the path between where you are currently, your current experience, and where you want to go, the kind of aspirations that you have. And it puts together a roadmap, walking the persons who's listening to your career vision admissions, walking them through how you're going to go from your current status to that aspiration that you have, that long-term vision. So why do you want to develop a career vision? Well, when you're putting together your business school applications, a career vision really becomes a significant part of that narrative. It's an essential step to planning how you want to approach those business school applications. And it becomes the foundation of the story that you're going to be telling the admissions committee. So when you're looking at defining that career vision, one of the things that you need to think about is identifying the gaps that you have. So thinking long-term at the role or the kind of impact that you hope to have and where you are today, what gap do you have in terms of the skills and the experience that you need to develop? And identifying what we call this gap, this knowledge gap, will help you answer the question, why do you need an MBA and why do you want to go to this particular MBA program? So let's go to the next slide, where I'm going to talk about some of the two key components of a career vision, the long-term goals and the short-term goals. So think about the long-term goals as the aspirational vision that you have, the kind of impact that you're hoping to have. It can be an impact on companies that you want to work with, the industry that you want to work in, the communities that you're going to be interacting in. It really should be something that's quite far out, 8 to 10 years out, and it should speak to your values. There is a recognition that in order to reach that long-term vision, you can get there multiple ways. So you can define multiple paths to get to that career vision. And I have an example here from an MBA candidate who walks us through his long-term vision. And I'm going to read it out loud for you. So he says, I aim to expand financial inclusion within existing banks by designing, developing, and launching a financial ecosystem for unbanked Americans. So that's his long-term vision. And in this long-term vision, you can hear that there's not real specifics as to how he's going to do it, but it gives us a sense of what industry, what area he wants to focus on, and the kind of impact, the kind of problem, the kind of challenge that he would like to resolve. A short-term goal is much more practical. It's think about it as the internship that you would do in an MBA, and 2 to 3 years out, the experience that you're going to be getting 2 to 3 years out of the MBA. It should be realistic. It should be achievable. Really, the more specific you can get here, the better. So you identifying the industry, identifying the function, geography, even providing examples of possible companies that you're interested in working with is really helpful here. The focus is on acquiring skills, acquiring knowledge, acquiring a network. So remember, long-term goal, the focus was on impact, and here the focus is much more concrete. And in order to present believable and credible short-term goals, you need to do some significant research to understand how a specific industry is recruiting and to understand how to grow within that industry. So here's an example from our same candidate. In order to gain the experience I need to eventually reach my goal of financial inclusion for America's unbanked, immediately following my MBA, I intend to pursue a role in business development or project management in a late-stage fintech startup such as Credit Karma or Payoff. So here you see that he is identifying the exact steps that he'll be taking after his MBA, and he even lists examples of companies that he would be interested in working with that will help him lead to his long-term goal. Okay, so now let's look at it concretely. How do you build this career vision statement? So I alluded to this, but I think one of the most important things is to do research on the industries and the roles that you're interested in, doing a lot of networking, as much networking as you can with people who are already in those industries, already in those roles, and understanding from them what are some of the keys to success in those roles, what are the skills that they're looking for, but also understanding what kind of recruitment the company or the industry uses to recruit talent, so that you can best position yourself, so that when you're talking through those short-term career goals, they sound really credible. Yes, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know before we get to far into this part, I have a question about the long-term goal and whether that needs to be jaw-dropping and super exciting, even though there's very little chance of it to come true.
That's a good question. Okay, so I think the long-term vision, the long-term goal, is about defining an area of interest so that when the admissions committee is looking at, that vision, they have a better understanding of, why the MBA fit, why you need an MBA, how is that going to help you reach those goals. So that's part of what you're trying to provide. Does it need to be jaw-dropping? No, but remember, when you're applying to business schools, they are looking for future leaders. They're looking for people who will make a significant impact in industries, who will innovate. And so you don't necessarily want to present goals that are, I want to be mid-level management, those types of goals may not be ambitious enough. You want to present ambitious goals, but they don't necessarily need to be, you're going to change. Well, I will say some schools do say change the world, right? As a motto, how will you change the world? I think that you want to provide the admissions committee with an understanding of where you see yourself long-term, for them to have an idea of what kind of alumnus you're going to become as well, and what field you're interested in. Remember, when you join an MBA class, you contribute not only the experiences that you already have, but you're also contributing it with the interests that you have. So if you're fascinated by a particular industry, this is part of what you contribute to the classroom, and that's part of what they look at. So the admissions committee is always looking at building a diverse classroom with a mixture of current experience, but also goals.
Yeah, I think it's really about, I would agree with that, and just say that it's more about what's important to you and showing that there is something greater than just, I want to go out and be a consultant and make a lot of money, right? What is the lasting impact that you want to leave in your career? And with short and long-term goals, honestly, I mean, in the world we live in, things change. We don't know what will be needed in 10 years. It's really more about the logical thought behind your goals and what you have so far, what you're bringing to the table, why you need the MBA, and how that translates. And Malvina is going to get into that more. But I've seen people that want to change the energy infrastructure in their home country, and I've also seen people that just want to move up within an organization, but the long-term goal is more about culture, and it's more about empowering women through opportunities within the company that they want to create and the culture they want to create. So it really should be something that you can get excited about, and not just write about it, but also talk about it when you get to the interview stage. I had a question as well about opportunities that provide exposure across different domains and verticals. And I think the things that come to mind for me, and Malvina, please add to that too. Obviously, consulting provides very broad exposure post-MBA. It sounds like we have quite a few consultants on this live chat. And yes, I don't know that you have a better chance of being accepted into MBA programs, but certainly from a classroom standpoint, you bring a wide variety of experiences and knowledge gained. So consulting would be one. Also, leadership development programs where you are often rotating throughout the company. Malvina, other things that come to mind?
No, I think those are good suggestions. And I mean, I think this leads nicely into the, identifying your transferable skills. Because when you're presenting your story to admissions, and especially if you're a career switcher, it's quite important that you reflect on the skills and the experience that you have that can be applied to where you want to go. And so that could be, for example, if you are, if you have an expertise in a certain field, think about how you could carry that into whether it's consulting, whether you want to go into consulting, or whether you want to go into another area. If you are working in, so let's see if we have some of the questions.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in consulting. I've got somebody who's coming from R&D, who's interested in consulting.
So, I mean, I would say, I think that it is so important to identify companies that you're interested in. So whether it's consulting companies, and then reach out to people that you may know or you may have contacts with, and find out from them, how does the company recruit? How do you grow within the company? Consultancy is quite large. You have the large consultancies, but you also have boutique consulting firms. And they may be a little bit more flexible in the types of profiles that they are looking at, and they may be more flexible in how they recruit. But those are things that, those are steps that are incredibly important to take now before you submit your application, so that you can talk about those goals that you've set out for yourself in a way that sounds really credible. And clearly, when you're doing, when you're doing a career switch that may be a little bit more difficult, showing the school that you have networked, that you have spoken to people who work in the field, and that you understand what steps are that you need to undertake, will give you so much more credibility in your goals.
Yeah, I think especially when you are, looking at making a switch, and in this case have 10 plus years of experience, which is traditionally outside of the realm of some of the larger consultancies. I mean, I have seen people make that case, but really being able, as Malvina said, to articulate that you have spoken with people, and you're very clear about the skills that you're bringing to the table, and why that would be appealing to a specific firm. And it may be you're looking at more of a boutique firm because of the age and stage, but I think doing that research will help you.
Absolutely. It'll help you build the narrative, but it will also help you sound more credible. One of the things that happens when you're networking is that you start learning the language that is being used in the industry. And just that, just using the right vocabulary will make you sound more credible, because the admissions committee is actually quite knowledgeable about what it takes to make it into investment banking or consulting, or any of those paths. So if you show familiarity with the kinds of profiles that these industries are looking for, and you show that you have already started doing your networking, and that you are positioning yourself in a way that you can start gaining experience in that area. So for example, if you want to switch into finance, that you are either taking on projects that are related, or doing things outside of work that are related to that, or doing even a pre-MBA internship. But however way you can start gaining experience in that field. And then the networking, those are the types of steps that you can take that can really help you sound more credible when you're doing a big career switch. So we talked about the skills assessment gap analysis. So that's really, really key. thinking about what kind of skills, what kind of knowledge you need to acquire in order to get to where you want to go. How does the MBA fit in? How does your short-term goals fit in? And the way I think about it is you have your long-term goals or long-term career vision. It's really the same thing. Is a combination of the skills that you have today, the MBA program, and everything that it's going to bring to you, and those short-term goals. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
But let's go to the next slide, and then we can answer a few more questions after.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're sticking with this same candidate here, and now he's pulled together his short-term goals and long-term goals and build this career vision statement. And let me dissect it for you. So my ultimate goal to establish financial inclusion within existing banks by designing, my ultimate goal is to establish financial inclusion within existing banks by designing, developing, and launching a financial ecosystem for unbanked Americans. I see having financial stability as the essence of empowerment. So this is his long-term goal. It's the impact that he's hoping to have. It's the problem that he has identified, and what he would like to try to find some resolution to. In my role with X company, I've worked with financial services clients to keep up with the rapid pace of change. And this experience, coupled with my undergraduate degree, is a solid foundation. So here he's giving us a very brief overview of the experience that he has. The work that I've done to date has shown me that the advances in technology make the unbanked an attractive, new, reasonable market for banks. New channels and the vast adoption of mobile solutions make it easier to reach customers for payment reminders and financial literacy education. DevOps tools and agile development make it possible to develop products and solutions faster and cheaper, making the investment in this new market less risky. So here he's basically outlining for us what the opportunity is. And then we continue. The MBA curriculum will equip me with specific tools to take on this challenge. I'll learn negotiation, risk management, product development, and entrepreneurship. I'll gain valuable leadership skills by being part of the MBA community. I will be supported through challenge and failure as I push myself out of my comfort zone. So that section talks about what the MBA will bring to him, and how that will help him. And then the short-term goals. Post-MBA, I plan to return to Company X as a senior consultant in the financial services practice, where I will gain additional exposure to financial clients who are in a period of rapid transition due to technological advances. I will help them to build unique financial products and will be in a position to advocate for products for the unbanked. So that's the short-term goals, and he's linking that to the long-term goals.
Yeah. And to build on that, to answer a question, and I believe it's answered in that short-term goal, but it is definitely appropriate to mention the name of the company you want to work at. I often will have clients include a few names, especially to show, that it's not just the McKinseys of the world, but also some of these boutique firms. I think geography oftentimes is good to mention depending on the school, and, some may have a very strong tie to their geographical location. So if you see yourself there, talking about that, but yes, that is
absolutely. And I'm looking at this question. So long-term goal, become a successful business leader and utilize my knowledge and position to make a social impact, helping the financially weaker students. Is such a long-term goal acceptable? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you'd want to build that out, obviously. But yeah, once, that's where you work to really envision that and put some more concrete details around it. But yes, I would agree. Definitely an interesting proposition. We have, so I'm just going to go back here. So with we had a question about, and this isn't necessarily on topic, but I want to make sure we don't forget it. What will admissions think if you quit your job to study for the GMAT?
Oh.
Yeah, that could be problematic, in my opinion. I would want you to use that time in some other capacity and not just be studying, whether that's a pre-MBA internship or something else productive, but I wouldn't necessarily advise that. Malvina, what would you?
I agree. I agree with Catherine. I think that if you're quitting your job and just doing the GMAT, that is going to look well. A lot of what the admissions committee is doing is comparing you to other candidates, and the other candidates are all continuing with their jobs and studying the GMAT. Mm-hmm. So right there, you have an issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like Catherine said, unless you can do something else at the same time that's related to your goals, I would try to study for the GMAT during vacation time.
Mm-hmm. And how about a long-term goal like providing leadership to future quantum computing startups? Companies show on the essay, I have the professional certifications and projects to back it up.
So what is the question? Sorry.
How does a long-term goal like providing leadership to future quantum computing startups look on an essay? I think it in my mind, it's hard to answer some of these without any other knowledge of your background. It sounds compelling. I would want to know why you want to do that, why you feel like that is important to the world, why we need that. But if you can justify that and really link it again to your past experience, part of that is certifications and projects, what specifically you need from the MBA, and then what you will do short term to ultimately reach this goal of leadership in quantum computing.
Okay.
Malvina, do you have a opinion on? So we're getting some questions about MBBs and whether they will accept certain backgrounds. Like someone specifically is 42. Is that too late to get into a bulge bracket firm?
It's very hard to say without knowing the background. I think these companies are. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it depends on your background, and it depends on what expertise you can bring to the company, and whether there's a match there in terms of the expertise that they're looking to develop internally and offer to their clients, and whether the experience that you have can be of benefit to them. I think partly that would be a big consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we had a question about somebody who's an actuary who wants to move to a bulge bracket. I mean, again, in theory, I mean, that is the whole point of the MBA. I mean, the vast majority of students who are applying want to make some sort of career change, whether that's function, industry, or both. I have seen people do that at, 27 years old, and I've seen them do it at 40 years old. It really is about convincing the admissions committee through your story, through your narrative, through your specific details about how this plays out. We understand, and we used to joke at Fuqua, nobody's going to follow you around with your essays to make sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do. They're not going to say, no, you said finance, go back to the finance club. You're not allowed to be in the marketing club. we understand that. The key is really convincing us that you have that solid foundation, that you have done the self-assessment, that you have done the research, that you clearly know, what skills you have, and how they would benefit you and your classmates, and how that translates into a career. I've seen
Absolutely.
people all over the map go into all different types of things, and inside that traditional bubble, and outside. So, that's really where we work with clients to help figure that out, what makes sense.
So we have a few questions of people who are interested in going into brand management, sales, creative. So I'd like to address that. So, so here, I don't know if you can, so Tech Bully Inc. is asking, what are the prospects for brand management, sales, advertising roles for internationals? So I think this is a good question. And the question specifies for internationals, which is very important in this part of the question. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that you want to do when you're looking at the schools that you're applying to is actually reach out to the clubs, to, whether they have a retail club or a luxury club or retail and luxury club or marketing club, but reach out to these clubs and ask them about the kind of activity that they're seeing on campus, which companies are coming to recruit on campus, and get a sense of what that activity looks like, and get a sense of how those companies are recruiting. Are they recruiting for positions just locally? Do they have international positions? Do the international positions sometimes the international positions are only recruited for by the local offices, which means that you would have to interview with the local office for a position in the local country. So all of those things are really good questions to ask the club representatives. Often schools will share some of this information. You'll be able to find on the school website which companies have come on campus. Mm-hmm. You can also find some information by looking at conferences, for example, that the retail marketing club have put together, and which companies came, and showing interest in the MBA populations. But I think speaking to students, and particularly, reaching out to those clubs and asking them, what's been the activity so far in the past, is really, really helpful. And I would absolutely advise you to do that.
Yeah. And the employment reports, too, oftentimes will specify mm-hmm. where international students have gone.
But if you're thinking of, maybe 5-10 companies in particular that are of interest to you, it's worth taking a look and finding out how do they go about their international recruitment. Mm-hmm. And so then we had a question from, it just went down. I'm a filmmaker. I'm looking for a transition from a creative role to a role in business. As a short-term goal, I'm looking for a role in strategy and content, media tech companies. Realistic goal.
Yeah. Perfect level. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that, this kind of path is a great reason for applying to an MBA program. So you have a good story. You just want to make sure that you are that you can explain to admissions, how you're going to make that transition happen. So explaining why you want to go into business, and explaining what kind of impact you hope to have in that field, and how your creative background will help you be a better leader in that field than someone without that background, and walk them through your short-term goal, looking for a strategy role. I think it's always a good idea to have a second plan, a plan B, in mm-hmm. case that particular goal doesn't work out. So have maybe 2 different paths that you could take that would both lead you to a more business role.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which we actually had a slide on that in terms of thinking about a plan B. I mean, this is a question, honestly, that Fuqua has asked for years. What is your plan B? Again, just wanting to know that you have thought through different options based on your background and your long-term goal. What else could you possibly pursue to get there? And so, now I think that question is becoming more common. I'm seeing it on more applications at top schools. But when you think about times of uncertainty, having a plan B and proactively sharing that, whether or not it's specifically asked, can just show that you are being as proactive as you possibly can. And I know that we are getting a lot of questions about very specific backgrounds. And ultimately, we're going to try to get to all of those throughout this conversation. But this is focusing on your story.
So here we have someone asking, so this plan B that you just talked about, Catherine, can we talk about it in the optional essay or wait for it in the interview invitation? I think you don't necessarily need to talk about it in the optional essay. I always think about the optional essay as often it's explaining either a project that you've done outside of work and you haven't had an opportunity to talk about it in the rest of your application, or actually just explaining maybe an issue with a grade or a time when you weren't working and explain why, something quite specific like that. I think the alternate plan or plan B, it doesn't necessarily require a lot of word count. So it can be included in the online application where they ask for your career goals. So, this is where you could say, long term, I hope to do this. Short term, I will pursue this, but I'm also looking at that. And both of these will lead me to my long-term goal. It can be as brief as that. And you can certainly add it into your essay if you're talking about your goals in your essay. But I think the idea is more that you want to show admissions that you understand that there's a certain level of fluidity with how people build their careers and the experiences that you need to acquire, you want to acquire, the knowledge that you want to develop, that it can happen in a combination of ways. I always think the long-term vision is the one that should stay the same, but that you can get there different ways. Yeah. As long as you can present those ways, so that plan A and plan B, in a very researched manner, meaning that you've done research and that you really understand how they work. So if your plan A is to go into consulting, that you understand how that industry recruits and that you understand how to position yourself there. And if your plan B is to, to go straight into the industry, then you can actually also explain how that would work. I think that's the key. The admissions committee is not necessarily looking for you to, box yourself into a set of short-term and midterm career goals. They just want to know that you have your head on your shoulders, that you understand how careers are made, that you understand how to map out your career. So what the worst case scenario for them would be that you do an MBA degree and then you're unemployed, and that would be a terrible situation for everyone. You have student fees to pay, etc. So they want to make sure that you're going to be in a good position and that you're prepared and that you're realistic.
Yes. We have a question about someone who gained 7 years of experience in consulting, then left the job to start their own company, and then after 2 years went back to consulting. When the company stabilized, would it be a good profile for an MBA?
That's very interesting. I wonder, what are your long-term goals? Do you want to stay in consulting? But I think that's really interesting, the fact that you went and started your own company and you worked at your company for 2 years, and imagine learned a huge amount by testing everything that you had learned in consulting before then, and actually experiencing it yourself, and the challenges and tribulations that you may have gone through, and being able to apply that to when you return to consulting. How has that impacted how you deal with clients? And that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But what is your long-term goal? Is it to stay in consulting, which is fine, or do you want to take this a step further, and are you thinking about starting another company? I don't know, but that's really interesting to me. That's there's a lot that can be done with that.
And I think also too, when you're thinking about this and explaining, telling your story, there's also opportunities. It's not just the essays, but within the online application, you're asked to specify why you left, why you came back, all that. So there are a lot of different points to address different parts of your story. But I would agree, yes, very compelling and interesting. I have a question about coming from a computer science background. Will my application to get into MBA make impact on the decision by the B schools, as it's a career change? I think there are a lot of people that come from a technical background, whether that's computer science or any other. It's a myriad of options these days of people coming out of technical programs. I don't think it makes a big impact. It's just telling your story, and what you need, from the MBA to get where you want to go. Certainly realistic to be an MBA candidate. That's somebody who was working, Malvina, at the central bank in their country and want to switch to a development finance institution such as the IFC. Would an MBA help with that?
Okay, so I think that I'm just looking at the question. So working at the central bank in my country, I would like to switch career to a development finance institutions such as IFC. So certainly, I think what you'll want to do is look at, you need to be able to make a case for the business school and explain to them what you're going to be seeking in the program, and what the program will, what kind of skills it'll help you develop, what kind of knowledge you're hoping to further extend in the network that you're hoping to develop. And then talking about explaining the kind of impact you hope to make in that role. But again, networking, being really familiar with how an institution such as the IFC does their talent development internally, and understanding how that functions, and looking at what the different offerings are that are related to that field. What's offered in the different programs is going to be very important as well.
Speaking of networking, we had a question about venture capital and how one makes a switch into that space. Networking reminded me of that question. I think it's definitely an area that MBA grads go into. It's definitely a one that is of interest to a lot of people. It's definitely not an on-campus search. It's much more networking and proactive outreach and leveraging the alumni network, and really being able to tell your story in a way that adds value to the particular firm.
And I mean, VC and PE are often grouped together, but they actually have very, very different ways of recruiting. It's very different paths, and their recruitment are very different. So that's something good to know, because that's, immediately when I see someone saying, I want to go into VCPE and say that as a career goal, that's problematic because they're very different. They recruit very differently and they're looking for different types of profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing to think about if you're interested in VC is, as Catherine said, networking is going to be very important, and mentioning that you're already networking in your essays or, in other parts of your application is definitely worth doing. Also thinking about any kind of experience that you have that you may be able to take to bring. So if you have a tech background or biotech background where VCs tend to invest, that could be, good positioning. And private equity recruits a little bit differently, where they're looking for often investment banking background or already some private equity experience. And so the profiles that they're looking at are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Malvina, we had a question about kind of using the MBA to get into data science or a solutions architect type of role.
Okay.
What are your thoughts there?
And what's the question?
I have to find it.
Is the question, can you do this?
I believe that
you can do anything.
Yes, exactly. I think I would look at.
If the question is, can you do this? Absolutely. I think it would be, being able to articulate what you can bring to that space. What are some of the opportunities that you see in terms of the developments that are taking place in that particular field, and how you see yourself being able to be at the forefront of that development, and what can you add to there?
Mm-hmm.
And you could speak about the experiences that you've acquired so far. You can speak about the what you'll get from the MBA that will help you best position you for being able to innovate or lead or whatever it is in that particular space that you're hoping to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking for looking at the schools that have specific concentrations in technology, I think would be there's a lot of options now.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
looking at those. So talking about Plan B, I've seen people questioning one's ability or firmness towards certain goal if you have a Plan B.
Okay.
It's a reasonable question. I think the way it's phrased on the Fuqua application is, understanding that nothing is certain and things change very rapidly. How else could you get to your goal? I honestly, especially in the environment that we are in, there's a lot of uncertainty. We have, especially if you're looking in the US, we have an election coming up. We have a global pandemic. I think showing that you have thought about other ways is not saying, it's not lessening your commitment. It's in fact showing a greater commitment to your long-term vision by pursuing multiple options. And as Malvina said, that Plan B does not need to take up a lot of space. On the Fuqua application, you have 500 characters to tell me what you want to do and what's your Plan B. So the majority of the time should be spent on that ideal short term, but we just want to see that you have thought about other options, because what the world looks like when you graduate in 2 years, that depends on a lot of factors right now.
And I will say that the importance of a Plan B, if you're looking to change your function, your industry, your location, all of those things at once, then you may want to bring forward a Plan B, because it'll be tough. So part of it is, how tough is this switch going to be? This move that you're describing is going to be, and that's when you want to think about a Plan B. And sometimes a Plan B is, okay, so my Plan A is I would change all of these things at once, and my Plan B would be that I'll just start out with changing the industry, and then I'll change the function, after a couple of years. Okay, so I have been in not-for-profit organizations. I want to do an MBA in social impact and continue in the same industry. Any advice? Okay.
My thought is, you are in nonprofit. You want to continue in nonprofit. I think the key here is, why do you need the MBA? And so being very specific about, what the MBA will provide to allow you to advance the organization, the mission, the industry. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so you want the admissions committee to understand what your goals are, and you want them also to understand how an MBA is going to help, you reach those goals. And you certainly don't want to be in a position where the MBA committee thinks, well, this person can get to those goals without us. We'll give the spot to someone else. So being very clear about what the business school degree is going to help you do is crucial here. And there's a lot that you can talk about, developing those leadership skills, further developing your business understanding of business, finance, because, you hope to take a leadership role in a particular area of within that space, and maybe even defining a particular space that is of a particular interest to you that you want to pursue would be really interesting.
Yeah. So we have a question about the MBB consulting firms and how much they are going to rely on your pre-MBA profile for hiring, or if the business school is a feeder school, it's an open playing field. How
heavily do MBB rely on pre-MBA profiles?
Yeah. I in my experience, and Malvina, you can share if this is the same from where you are, but consulting firms place more emphasis, I would say, on your pre-MBA profile than maybe others in terms of GPA and certainly GMAT scores. They're going to be, and really I think they tend to put more of a focus on that than others. Now, I have heard consulting firms, alumni and others say, that's really not as big of an issue. You can still network your way in. But that's, I would say, the more of the exception than the rule, in my experience.
And they also want to know what kind of, what industry experience you come with, because that's what they're going to be able to sell to the client.
Right.
So it's really important. So when they come, when they come on campus, they're going to be looking at all of that, your pre-MBA experience and your MBA experience. And, in some industries, they may not look at any grades and scores or whatnot, because they're just assuming the fact that you're doing the MBA program shows that you're already academically sound and analytically sound. And it really, and they may put more emphasis on the EQ skills, your people skills and leadership skills and things like that. So it's going to be a little bit dependent on the industry. I can tell you that when I was recruiting for marketing, and I would go on campus, I would, I wouldn't necessarily be looking at, grades and things like that. I would be looking more for fit, culture fit. and trying to establish whether that person would be happy in the company.
Yeah. And I know that we are getting near the end here of our hour, but I wanted to put this last slide up and just say, again, we understand that this is a very personal process, and it is, we all have our unique backgrounds and skills and experiences and goals. And so if you do have further questions or want the free consultation, please do go to the Fortuna website. I think I am okay answering a couple other questions. Malvina, if you want to.
Sure.
If you have time.
Yeah, do we still have time? We're good with time?
I believe so. Let's take 2 more here. Have you seen one pop up? In your experience, which industries companies readily sponsor H-1Bs?
Okay, I can take that. So that's a very important question, and something that, if you're an international student, you really need to be mindful of. And the way I think about it is typically companies who recruit in very large volumes are the companies or the industries that are going to be more likely to sponsor. So that's often finance and consulting, because they are recruiting in large volumes and they have all of the processes in place to do the sponsoring. Often with companies who are recruiting in smaller volumes, they may say, well, we're interested in your profile, but you need to interview with the country where you're from or where you're entitled to work. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of information that are really interesting to find out from students.
Talking to students, yeah. And it will change. I mean, in the U.S., it
changes all the time.
It changes, and again, we have an election coming up. We have a pandemic. A lot could change between now and then. But talking to students, other international students, the Career Center, really understanding what that landscape looks like now and how they hope it will look in the future.
And the schools have they will have clubs, geographical clubs, so European club, Africa club, etc. And those are also really worth reaching out to and asking exactly those types of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Looking to see one that. Do you find opportunities post-COVID? Oh, how do you find opportunities post-COVID? And if you could tell me whether Canada would take a hit in the job market post-COVID. A bit of a loaded question there, and a lot of unknowns that I would say that in general, what we're hearing from schools at this point is that employment has not been significantly impacted, at least based on the webinars that I have been on and the articles I've been reading and people I've been talking to. The need for MBA talent exists, and sometimes with a lot of uncertainty, it becomes even more important to have people that are able to think strategically and innovatively and work well in a team and adapt, and all of these skills that the MBA is known for.
That's very true. And that sometimes it takes companies, it's going to take companies a little bit of time just to figure out, the kind of talent that they need to address some of the major changes that the work world has undergone in the last 4 months, or however months, 6 months now. So I think that this is really interesting, that there will be a need for some for talent with very strong critical thinking skills and ability to look at how the business world has been impacted and what that means internally, but I think companies are right now trying to figure all that, and that will have an impact on on how jobs are defined, not necessarily what jobs are out there, but also what kind of talent and skills they're looking for.
Yeah.
Or projects they want people to work on.
Okay. Well, I know we've gone past our hour at this point, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and also respectful of the fact that you all have very okay, one more question.
One more? Okay.
But again, we are, we'd be happy to answer these questions and through a free consultation. But if your quant score is stuck at 47, so they're doing a webinar on that tomorrow. So good. I was wondering about that.
I think the last question has to do with, in your opinion, will schools accept higher GMAT scores for? So I think you mean, will schools require higher GMAT scores for international students than before? I don't think so, and I think again, it's they're not just looking at the GMAT score; they're looking at the entirety of your profile, the experiences you have so far, what you've done with your life so far, what your goals are. And how you've acted upon your goals up to now, and your recommender letters and what they say about you. It's really the entirety of the application. It's not just the GMAT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I know that NYU really focuses. It has the EQ, IQ, but it really is the complete package for all the schools. They're looking at your quant ability, right, your academic performance, but they're also looking at, the soft skills, the people skills.
And being able to communicate those clearly, and in a way that shows that, you have thought about it in depth, and you've done research, and you show a logical path. That in and of itself is so important. Yeah,
the GMAT is one piece of the puzzle. So, well, thank you all for joining us and for the fantastic questions, and we hope we got to them. And again, we would love to be a resource to you through Fortuna Admissions. Malvina and I are just two of the coaches on our team, and so feel free to send an email for more information. And definitely, again, we've got a lot of good content on YouTube if you are looking for a specific topic. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.